I knew something was off the moment I saw Brenda Turner standing at my front door with that pinched expression she always wore when she wanted something from the neighborhood. My name is Blake Thompson, and I have lived in the Cedar Ridge community just outside Portland, Oregon for the past 8 years. It is a nice enough place, with tree-lined streets and well-maintained homes, but like many neighborhoods in America, it comes with the special burden of a homeowner association. Brenda was not just any HOA board member. She was the president, a title she wielded like a weapon, and she had made it her personal mission to control every aspect of our lives under the guise of maintaining property values. It was late October, and the air already had that sharp bite that promised an early winter. I had just finished stacking my propane tanks in the covered area beside my garage when I heard her heels clicking up my driveway. I owned 6 large propane tanks, each holding 100 gallons. My house was one of the few properties in Cedar Ridge that relied entirely on propane for heating, hot water, and cooking. The previous owner had set it up that way, and I had maintained the system because it worked perfectly for me. "Blake," Brenda called out, her voice carrying that fake sweetness that made my teeth hurt. "I need to talk to you about those tanks." I straightened up, wiping my hands on my jeans. "What about them?" She stopped a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest. Brenda was in her mid-40s, with carefully highlighted blonde hair that she kept in a perpetual bob, and she always dressed like she was heading to some country club luncheon, even on a Saturday morning. Today, she wore a cream-colored sweater and pressed slacks, with pearls at her neck. "Well, I have been thinking," she began, and I already knew I was not going to like where this was going. With winter coming and energy costs being what they are, it seems rather selfish of you to keep all that propane to yourself when other members of our community might need it. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "Excuse me, your tanks," she said, gesturing toward them like they were community property. "You have so much propane, and I have been reading about the predicted shortages this winter. It only makes sense that you should share with your neighbors. Particularly with me. My heating bills are already astronomical, and I could really use some supplemental heating." "You want me to give you my propane," I said slowly, making sure I understood correctly. "Not give, necessarily," Brenda said, though her tone suggested that was exactly what she meant. "Share, as part of being a good neighbor and community member. The HOA bylaws clearly state that residents should act in the best interest of the community as a whole." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that losing my temper would only make this worse. "Brenda, these tanks are my property. I paid for them and for the propane in them. My entire house runs on this fuel. I cannot just give it away." Her expression hardened. "I am not asking for all of it, Blake. Just enough to help me through the winter. You have 6 tanks. Surely you can spare one." "No," I said firmly. "I need all of it. These tanks have to last me through the entire winter. I budget carefully for this, and I have calculated exactly how much I need." Brenda's face flushed red, and I saw the Karen emerging in full force. "This is incredibly selfish of you. Here I am, trying to be reasonable and asking nicely, and you cannot even spare a single tank for your HOA president." "It has nothing to do with you being HOA president," I said, though we both knew that was only partially true. "It has to do with the fact that this is my property, which I need to heat my home." "Fine," she snapped. "But do not come crying to me when the HOA board starts looking more closely at your property. I have noticed several violations recently." "What violations?" I asked, my jaw tightening. "Your grass was a 1/4 inch too long last week. And that garden shed of yours might be 6 inches over the allowed square footage. I will have to verify, of course." She smiled, and it was not pleasant. The HOA takes these matters very seriously, as you know. She turned on her heel and marched back down my driveway before I could respond. I stood there, anger simmering in my chest, knowing that I had just made an enemy. But what else could I have done? The woman had actually expected me to hand over hundreds of dollars worth of propane just because she asked. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 3 violation notices from the HOA. The first claimed my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. The second said my garbage cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though they were in my garage with the door closed. The third stated that I had parked my work truck in my driveway overnight, which was apparently against some obscure rule I had never heard of. Each violation came with a $50 fine. I paid them, documenting everything, because I knew this was Brenda's revenge. My neighbor, Marcus Hayes, confirmed it when he stopped by one evening. "Dude, Brenda has been going around telling everyone you are hoarding propane," Marcus said, shaking his head. He was a good guy, an engineer who worked from home and mostly kept to himself. "She is trying to turn the neighborhood against you. Let me guess, she asked you for propane too?" "Nope, just you from what I hear. I think she figured you had the most and would be the easiest target." He paused. "You know her heating system is fine, right? She has natural gas like most of us. This is just her being vindictive because you told her no." That confirmation made everything worse somehow. Brenda did not even need propane. She just wanted to assert control, to prove she could make me comply with her demands. November arrived with a vengeance. The temperatures dropped faster than predicted, and Portland was hit with an early cold snap that had everyone scrambling. The news reported that energy companies were struggling to keep up with demand, and there were warnings about potential shortages. I checked my propane levels daily. With careful management, I would make it through the winter fine. I kept my thermostat at a reasonable 68 degrees, took shorter showers, and made sure my home was properly insulated. Brenda, apparently, did not believe in conservation. I knew this because she started showing up at my door once a week like clockwork. Every single time, she had a new argument for why I should give her propane. "Blake, this is ridiculous," she said during her third visit in mid-November. "I am freezing in my own home. My gas bill last month was $400. $400. You could help me, but you are choosing not to." "Turn down your thermostat," I suggested. "Wear a sweater. That is what normal people do." "I should not have to be uncomfortable in my own home," she protested. "And you have plenty of propane just sitting there. What is it going to hurt to share?" "Brenda, for the last time, no. That propane is my heating fuel. I am not giving it to you, selling it to you, or sharing it with you. Please stop asking." She glared at me. "You are going to regret this, Blake Thompson. Mark my words." The HOA violations continued. I was cited for having a wreath on my door that was not pre-approved, for having outdoor lights that were too bright, even though they were the same lights my neighbors had, for having leaves on my lawn, even though I had just raked 2 days before, and the leaves had blown from other yards. Each citation came with a fine. Each fine went into my documentation folder. I contacted a lawyer in early December, a real estate attorney named Patricia Mendez, who specialized in HOA disputes. She reviewed my case during a consultation at her office in downtown Portland. "This is clear harassment," she said, looking through the stack of violation notices I had brought. "The selective enforcement alone is grounds for legal action. But I have to tell you, Blake, going after an HOA is expensive and time-consuming. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I want to know my options," I said. "I am documenting everything." "But I want to understand what my rights are." Patricia nodded. Keep doing what you are doing. Document every interaction, every violation notice, everything. If she escalates, we will have a strong case. In the meantime, I will send a letter to the HOA board informing them that their pattern of selective enforcement constitutes harassment and could result in legal action. The letter was sent on December 10th. Brenda received it on December 12th, and she was at my door by December 13th, absolutely livid. "How dare you?" she shrieked, waving the letter in my face. "How dare you accuse me of harassment? I am doing my job as HOA president." By citing me for violations that do not exist while ignoring actual violations in other yards, I kept my voice calm, which only seemed to enrage her more. "Brenda, you are mad because I would not give you free propane. This has nothing to do with HOA rules, and we both know it." "I could make your life a living hell," she hissed. "You already are," I replied. "And now it is documented. Keep it up and I will see you in court." She left, slamming my gate so hard it rattled. 2 days later, something happened that changed everything. I woke up on a frigid December morning to find that 2 of my propane tanks had been opened, their valves turned to allow the gas to escape. I discovered it only because I could smell the distinctive odor when I went outside to get my newspaper. My heart dropped into my stomach as I rushed over and shut the valves, but it was too late. Both tanks were completely empty. 200 gallons of propane gone. That was roughly $2,000 worth of fuel that I desperately needed to get through the winter. I immediately called the police. The non-emergency line connected me to a dispatcher who sent out an officer within the hour. Officer David Park arrived in his patrol car, and I showed him the tanks and explained the situation. "You are sure they were full?" he asked, taking notes. "I checked them 3 days ago. Both were at capacity. Someone deliberately opened these valves." "Any idea who might have done this?" I hesitated, then told him everything. About Brenda's demands for propane, the harassment, the violation notices, her threats. Officer Park listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. "That is concerning," he said. "But I have to be honest with you, Mr. Thompson. Without evidence directly linking her to this, it is going to be hard to pursue charges. Do you have any security cameras?" "No," I admitted, mentally kicking myself. "I never thought I would need them. I would recommend getting some installed immediately. In the meantime, I will file this report and have a word with Miss Turner. Maybe the police attention will convince her to back off." After Officer Park left, I called Patricia Mendez and told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long moment. "Blake, this has crossed a line from harassment into criminal activity. What she did, if it was her, constitutes destruction of property and theft. You need security cameras installed today. Not tomorrow, today. Can you do that?" "I will make it happen," I promised. I spent the rest of that day installing a comprehensive security system around my property. Cameras covering every angle of my driveway, garage, and propane tank area. They were wireless, uploaded to the cloud, and would send alerts to my phone whenever they detected motion. The system was expensive, but it was worth every penny. Officer Park did visit Brenda, because she showed up at my door that evening accompanied by her husband, Richard Turner. Richard was a quiet man who worked in accounting and mostly seemed embarrassed by his wife's antics. He stood slightly behind her, looking uncomfortable. "The police came to my house," Brenda said, her voice shaking with rage. "They suggested I had something to do with your propane situation." "How dare you accuse me of criminal activity?" "I did not accuse you of anything," I said calmly, very aware that my new cameras were recording every word. "I reported what happened, and I mentioned our conflict when asked if I had any idea who might have done it." If you did not do it, then you have nothing to worry about." "Of course I did not do it," she snapped. "I would never do something so petty and illegal." "Then we do not have a problem," I said. "Have a good evening, Brenda." I closed the door, and through the window, I watched as Richard put a hand on Brenda's arm, clearly trying to calm her down. They left, but I could see her gesturing angrily the entire walk back to their house 3 doors down. Nothing happened for almost a week. It was a tense, quiet period where I constantly checked my camera feeds and my remaining propane tanks. I had called the propane company and paid an emergency rate to refill the 2 emptied tanks, which cost me even more money. My carefully planned budget for the winter was now completely shot. December 21st was the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. It was also the night Brenda struck again. My phone buzzed at 2:30 in the morning with a motion alert. I grabbed it, my heart pounding, and opened the camera app. There, clear as day in the infrared night vision, was Brenda Turner. She was dressed in dark clothing, a coat pulled tight around her, and she was creeping toward my propane tanks with something in her hand. I watched in real time as she approached the nearest tank and reached for the valve. But this time, I was ready. I had installed locks on all the valves after the first incident, special propane tank locks that required a key to open. Brenda pulled at the lock, trying to force it, then tried what looked like a screwdriver to pry it off. I was already calling 911. "This is 911. What is your emergency?" "There is someone on my property trying to tamper with my propane tanks. I have her on camera right now. This is the second time this has happened." The dispatcher took my information and assured me officers were on the way. I stayed on the line, watching through my camera as Brenda continued to struggle with the lock. When that did not work, she tried the next tank and the next. All were locked. Frustrated, she pulled out her phone and used its light to examine the locks more closely. That was when the police arrived. 2 patrol cars, lights off, pulled up to the curb. Officer Park was one of the responding officers, along with Officer Jennifer Mills. I met them at my front door and showed them the live camera feed. "She is still there," Officer Park said, and they immediately moved around the side of my house. I watched from my doorway as they approached Brenda. The shock on her face when the flashlights hit her was priceless. She immediately started talking, her voice high and defensive, though I could not hear the words from where I stood. Officer Park returned to me a few minutes later while Officer Mills stayed with Brenda. "Mr. Thompson, we are going to need a copy of that camera footage. Miss Turner is being placed under arrest for attempted theft and destruction of property." I watched as they handcuffed Brenda Turner, HOA president and neighborhood tyrant, and placed her in the back of a patrol car. Richard Turner emerged from their house in his bathrobe, looking confused and horrified when the officers explained what had happened. The footage was damning. It clearly showed Brenda's face, showed her attempting to open my propane tank valves, and showed her tools. When the police searched her pockets, they found the screwdriver and a pair of pliers. Combined with the police report from the first incident and the pattern of harassment I had documented, the prosecutor's office decided to pursue charges. Brenda was charged with 2 counts of attempted theft, 1 count of attempted destruction of property, and the original incident was reopened with charges of theft and destruction of property. Oregon law takes property crimes seriously, especially when they involve potentially dangerous materials like propane. She was released on bail the next morning, but the damage was done. Word spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. The woman who had appointed herself the moral guardian of the neighborhood, who had spent years citing people for minor infractions and power tripping over HOA rules, had been arrested for trying to steal propane. The HOA board held an emergency meeting on December 23rd. I attended, along with about 40 other residents who wanted to see what would happen. Brenda was not there. According to Richard, she was at home, too humiliated to show her face. The vice president, Thomas Lancaster, ran the meeting. He was a retired teacher, a reasonable man who I had always gotten along with. In light of recent events, Thomas began, his voice grave, the board has voted to immediately suspend Brenda Turner from her position as HOA president, pending the outcome of her legal issues. We have also voted to launch an internal review of all violation notices issued in the past year to ensure there has been no pattern of selective enforcement or abuse of power. The room erupted in conversation. Several people raised their hands with stories of their own harassment by Brenda. It turned out I was far from her only target. She had been using her position to bully people over personal grudges for years. Additionally, Thomas continued, we want to formally apologize to Blake Thompson for the harassment he has endured. After reviewing his file, it is clear that he was cited for numerous violations that were either non-existent or selectively enforced. All fines levied against Mr. Thompson in the past 6 months will be refunded in full. There was applause, which made me uncomfortable, but I appreciated the gesture. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to apologize for believing Brenda's stories about me hoarding propane. I accepted their apologies, understanding that Brenda was a master manipulator who had fooled a lot of people for a long time. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it alone, as I usually did, comfortable in my properly heated home, using the propane I had rightfully protected. Meanwhile, 3 houses down, the Turner household was reportedly in chaos. Richard had moved into the guest room. Their adult daughter had driven up from Sacramento and was apparently trying to convince her mother to take a plea deal. The winter that year was brutal. Portland was hit with ice storms in January that knocked out power for thousands of people. My propane system kept working perfectly, keeping my home warm even when the electricity was out for 3 days. I checked in on Marcus and some of my other neighbors, making sure everyone was okay. Brenda's trial was set for March. In the meantime, the HOA board's internal review revealed a disturbing pattern. Over the past 3 years, Brenda had issued over 200 violation notices. Upon investigation, roughly 60% of them were found to be either fraudulent, exaggerated, or selectively enforced. She had collected thousands of dollars in fines that were not legitimate. The HOA board made the decision to refund fines to everyone who had been unfairly targeted. They also formally removed Brenda from the board and banned her from ever holding a position again. Thomas Lancaster became the new president and immediately implemented reforms to prevent this kind of abuse from happening in the future. But Brenda was not done causing problems. In mid-February, I received a letter from an attorney representing Brenda Turner. It was a cease and desist, claiming I had defamed her by telling neighbors about her arrest. I immediately forwarded it to Patricia Mendez, who called me back within an hour, laughing. "This is ridiculous," Patricia said. "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. She was arrested. That is a matter of public record. Her attorney is either incompetent or is just trying to scare you. Ignore it." I ignored it, but Brenda did not ignore me. She started a blog. An actual blog, where she posted daily rants about how she was the victim of a conspiracy. According to her posts, I had somehow faked the camera footage. The police were in on it. The HOA board was corrupt. She was the only honest person in Cedar Ridge, and everyone was out to get her. The blog was deranged, and it hurt her legal case significantly. Her attorney tried to get her to take it down, but she refused. The prosecutor's office used several of her posts as evidence of her mindset and her refusal to take responsibility for her actions. March arrived with the first hints of spring. Crocuses pushed up through the last remnants of snow, and the days grew noticeably longer. My propane tanks were still at adequate levels. I had made it through the winter, despite Brenda's best efforts. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified about the harassment, the demands for propane, the threats, and the 2 incidents with my tanks. The camera footage was played for the jury, and it was devastating. You could clearly see Brenda's face, clearly see her intent, and clearly see her attempting to tamper with the valves. The defense tried to argue that Brenda had been under extreme stress, that she had not been thinking clearly, that this was out of character for her. But the prosecution brought forward 8 other residents of Cedar Ridge who testified about her pattern of harassment and abuse of power. They painted a picture of a woman who had become drunk on the tiny amount of authority she held and had lost all perspective. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Brenda Turner was convicted of 2 counts of attempted theft, 1 count of attempted destruction of property, 1 count of theft, and 1 count of destruction of property. The judge was not lenient. Because propane is a potentially dangerous material, and because her actions could have resulted in fire or explosion if the gas had accumulated in an enclosed space, he treated it seriously. She was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, and ordered to pay full restitution to me for the cost of the stolen propane, the emergency refill, my security system, and my legal fees. The total came to just over $8,000. Additionally, the HOA board filed a civil suit against her for the fraudulent fines she had collected. That case was settled out of court, with Brenda agreeing to pay back approximately $15,000 to various residents. Richard Turner filed for divorce in April. I felt bad for him. He was a decent man who had been married to a woman who gradually revealed herself to be a controlling, vindictive person. Their house went on the market in May, and Richard moved to an apartment in Beaverton. Brenda served her full sentence. I know because I checked. She was released in September of the following year, and according to the conditions of her probation, she was not allowed to return to Cedar Ridge. She moved to Gresham, where she apparently took a job as a retail manager. I have no idea if she learned anything from the experience. As for me, life returned to normal. Thomas Lancaster turned out to be an excellent HOA president. He focused on actual community building rather than petty rule enforcement. We organized neighborhood barbecues, a community garden project, and a watch program that was actually about looking out for each other rather than spying and reporting violations. My propane tanks remained secure behind their locks. I never had another incident. The security cameras stayed up, though, because once you have learned to protect yourself, it is hard to go back to being naive. Marcus and I became good friends. We started a tradition of watching football together on Sundays during the season, usually at my place because my TV was bigger. Other neighbors stopped by regularly, and I realized how much Brenda's reign of terror had isolated people from each other. Without her constant drama and accusations, people actually talked to each other, helped each other, and built genuine connections. The following winter was mild, and I had more than enough propane. I even helped out a neighbor, the elderly Mrs. Chen, whose heating system broke down during a cold snap in January. I loaned her a small space heater and made sure she was staying warm until her furnace could be repaired. She tried to pay me, but I refused. That is what neighbors do for each other. No strings attached, no demands, just basic human decency. It is funny how one person can poison an entire community, and how the removal of that poison allows everything to heal. Brenda Turner had turned our HOA into her personal fiefdom, and in doing so, she had made everyone miserable. Her downfall was not just about me refusing to give her propane. It was about years of accumulated grievances, abuse of power, and vindictive behavior finally catching up with her. I still live in Cedar Ridge. My house is well maintained, my propane tanks are full, and I have never received another HOA violation notice. Thomas Lancaster retired from the board last year, and we elected a new president, a woman named Sarah Kim, who is an attorney and who has made transparency and fairness her priorities. The blog Brenda started is still up, though she stopped posting after her conviction. Every now and then, I look at it, reading her increasingly unhinged rants, and I am reminded of how important it is to stand up to bullies. If I had given in to her initial demand, if I had let her intimidate me into handing over even one tank of propane, she would have owned me. She would have known she could push me around, and she would have escalated her demands. By saying no, by documenting everything, and by refusing to be a victim, I protected not just myself but ultimately the entire neighborhood. Sometimes standing your ground is not about being stubborn or vindictive. Sometimes it is about drawing a line and saying this far, no further. The legal system worked the way it was supposed to. The police took my complaint seriously. The prosecutor pursued justice. The jury saw through the excuses and held Brenda accountable for her actions. And the community learned a valuable lesson about the difference between legitimate authority and petty tyranny. I learned some lessons too. I learned that security cameras are worth every penny. I learned that documentation is your best friend when dealing with harassment. I learned that standing up to a bully might make your life harder in the short term, but it is worth it in the long term. And I learned that most people are fundamentally decent and will support you when you are in the right, even if it takes them a while to see through the manipulations of someone like Brenda. On cold winter nights, when I am sitting in my warm living room with a cup of coffee, listening to the wind howl outside, I sometimes think about Brenda. I wonder if she ever thinks about the moment when everything fell apart for her. Was it when she decided to demand my propane? Was it when she started issuing those fraudulent violations? Or was it that night when she crept onto my property, convinced she was above consequences, only to end up in handcuffs? I do not hate her. That might surprise some people, but it is true. I feel sorry for her in a way. She let whatever small power she had corrupt her completely. She destroyed her marriage, her reputation, and her freedom, all because she could not stand being told no. That is a tragedy, even if it is one of her own making. The propane tanks are still there, lined up beside my garage. They have become something of a neighborhood joke, in a good-natured way. Last Halloween, someone put a sign on my lawn that said Propane Fortress with an arrow pointing to the tanks. I left it up for a week because it was funny. Marcus gave me a propane-themed Christmas ornament last year, a little tank with a bow on it. It hangs on my tree every year now. Life has a way of working things out. The people who deserve consequences usually get them, eventually. The people who stand up for themselves and do the right thing usually come out okay. And communities that learn from their mistakes become stronger. Cedar Ridge is a better place now than it was when Brenda Turner ruled it with an iron fist. We look out for each other. We treat each other with respect. And we understand that rules exist to help us live together harmoniously, not to give petty tyrants a way to exercise power over others. As for me, I am just a guy who wanted to heat his house without drama. I never wanted to be the center of a neighborhood scandal. I never wanted to go to court or watch someone get arrested. All I wanted was to be left alone with my property, which I had paid for and which I needed. The fact that such a simple, reasonable position led to all of this shows just how far off the rails Brenda had gone. And the fact that it ended with her in jail, divorced, and banned from the neighborhood shows that actions have consequences, even for HOA presidents who think they are untouchable. Every time I check my propane levels now, which I still do regularly because old habits die hard, I am reminded of that entire ordeal. But mostly, I am reminded that I did the right thing. I stood my ground. I protected my property. I documented everything. And when pushed, I fought back through the proper legal channels. That is really what this whole story is about. Not propane tanks or HOA violations or even Karen-like behavior. It is about the importance of standing up for yourself, about refusing to be bullied, and about trusting that the system, for all its flaws, can work when you do things the right way. Winter comes every year. The temperatures drop, the snow falls, and everyone hunkers down in their homes, trying to stay warm. And every year, my propane tanks do exactly what they are supposed to do. They keep my house comfortable, my water hot, and my stove working. They are not community property. They are not up for negotiation. They are mine, and I earned them through hard work and careful planning. Brenda Turner demanded I share them for free. She tried to bully me into compliance. When that did not work, she tried to destroy what I would not give her. And in the end, she lost everything while I kept what was rightfully mine. There is a certain poetic justice in that. She spent that winter dealing with legal troubles, a crumbling marriage, and the shame of her arrest, while I spent it warm and comfortable in my properly heated home. She wanted to take from me out of spite and entitlement, and instead, she lost far more than she ever could have gained. The neighborhood has moved on. New people have moved into the Turner house, a young couple with a baby who seem nice and normal. They have no idea about the drama that unfolded here, and that is probably for the best. Cedar Ridge is writing a new chapter, one without Brenda Turner as the villain. Sometimes I see Richard around town. We nod to each other but do not talk. I think he is embarrassed about everything that happened, though none of it was his fault. He was just married to the wrong person, and he paid a heavy price for it. I hope he has found some peace. As for the propane situation, I have actually become something of a resource for my neighbors on the subject. A few people have asked me about converting to propane systems, and I have been happy to share what I know. The difference is they ask respectfully, they offer to pay for my time and expertise, and they understand that my property is my own. That is how normal human interactions work. Looking back on everything that happened, from that first confrontation in October to Brenda's sentencing the following spring, it feels almost surreal. How did a simple refusal to give away my heating fuel spiral into arrest, trial, and jail time? But that is what happens when someone values control more than common sense, when they let ego override ethics, and when they refuse to accept that no means no. I am grateful it ended the way it did. I am grateful for Officer Park taking my complaint seriously. I am grateful for Patricia Mendez giving me solid legal advice. I am grateful for Thomas Lancaster and the HOA board doing the right thing. And I am grateful for my neighbors who eventually saw the truth and supported me. Most of all, I am grateful I installed those security cameras when I did. Without that video evidence, it would have been my word against Brenda's, and who knows how that would have turned out. Technology saved me in this case, providing irrefutable proof of what she had done. The locks are still on my propane tank valves. They will probably stay there forever, even though the threat is long gone. They are a reminder, both to me and to anyone who might get similar ideas, that I protect what is mine. They are also a reminder of the night everything changed, when Brenda Turner went from neighborhood nuisance to criminal defendant. Every community has its difficult people. Every HOA has its power-hungry board members. But not every situation escalates the way this one did. Most people, when told no firmly and repeatedly, eventually back off. Most people do not commit crimes out of spite. Brenda Turner was a special case, someone who had spent so long getting her way through intimidation that she literally could not comprehend being denied. The winter she wanted to freeze me is the winter she froze herself out of everything. Her position, her reputation, her marriage, her freedom, all of it gone because she could not stand that I would not give her something that was not hers to have. And me, I stayed warm, I stood firm. And I watched as justice took its course. Not with pleasure exactly, because there is something sad about watching anyone destroy their own life, but with satisfaction, knowing that bullies do not always win, and that sometimes doing the right thing really does pay off. That is the story of how HOA Karen demanded I share my propane tanks for free, and how I watched her freeze all winter. Except, she did not freeze physically. She froze herself out of everything that mattered, all through her own choices, her own actions, and her own refusal to accept basic boundaries. And the propane tanks, they are still here, full and functional, ready for whatever winter brings next. Just like they always have been, and just like they always will be. Mine. Paid for. Protected. And absolutely, positively not for sharing with entitled HOA presidents who think demanding something makes it theirs.